I hope my voice doesn't give out. Dave Bozzi had me out singing last night, and that was, thanks, Dave. I also have a bet with the other two presenters that we're going to have the best time. So if you could help me out, I'll give you the cue, thunderous applause, and that's all I'm going to ask, and the rest will just sort of wing. So I'm hoping I can count on you for that. The evolution of MDM, the content and customer data mashup at ALM. First off, who is this guy? I'm the Vice President of Technology for ALM. I have a career in media and publishing, worked at the Wall Street Journal for over 20 years, have been at ALM for about 10 years, primarily to develop, deliver, and build support solutions for customers, internal and external. I've described what I do a little bit like the cleaner Winston Wolfe from the 1984 classic Pulp Fiction. He's sort of the penultimate planner, right? Delegator and deliverer. It's a dirty job, and I'm not quite sure anyone else wants it, so. Can you see that? Okay. ALM, we are an information and intelligence company built by acquisition. We provide our customers with critical news, data analysis, marketing solutions, and events to successfully manage the business of business. We help our customers to discover, connect, and compete to win. As an overview, we serve the legal, insurance and benefit, investment and financial services, risk, consulting, and real estate verticals. We do this through a host of products in these markets, offering analysis, news, and intelligence. The scale of our websites, we have about 96 million page views annually, with about 30 million unique visits annually. MarkLogic and MDM. I'm going to take a minute to just define what MDM really means for ALM, because I think in the business world you can sort of run the gamut of what it means. For ALM, we're thinking about MDM in two ways. First, as an aggregation and synchronization of our customer data, the elusive 360-degree view. Also, the use of all of our data and content together to provide analysis and intelligence about who our customers are and the verticals that they work in. For ALM, we're not really finished delivering our MDM. We are very close, as a matter of days, away from being operational with our data. And then providing the synchronization back to our enterprise systems. But we have the solution. We've begun that operational movement of data, and we have the roadmap in place and projects so that we can complete these tasks. So MarkLogic at ALM, we use it primarily in two ways, right? First, it's as for content, we use it as an archive and a repository used for content delivery to licensees to facilitate repurposing for contents, for reprints and such, powers the content to our websites. We use it for a taxonomy manager, file tracker, and we've also developed some other uses for it internally. One of them is a content share portal for all of our editorial across all of our verticals. And we are developing a channel delivery called the Feederator, or Magic Feederator, to deliver content to for modules for our websites as well as for newsletters and such. On the customer side, right, we're using it for master data management, customer behavior, transactions, product information, and the building of our universal profile. So in trying to build sort of the enterprise vision for what we wanted to do with MDM, I made the mistake of asking my team to show me a data map. I wanted to see where all of it was. So this way I could get an idea of how it all worked together, or at least what it looked like. So some, smartass in my organization decided to give me what the Afghanistan stability or spaghetti map, the famous spaghetti map of Afghanistan is. I looked at it and I thought, well, okay, ours, we can't be that bureaucratic, right? We also, it can't be as complex as what's happening in a war zone. And I think it's funny that this diagram is actually called Afghanistan Stability, but it's a working draft, right? So it's version 3. So just, I thought that was a little humorous. The reality is, my data map doesn't look that much better, right? It's very complex. We were built by acquisition. Our solution was to be the first ever big data MDM built for media companies with a digital focus, but it can be used by anyone. The emphasis is on customer or prospect behavior as the key driver. It lets us combine multiple data sources into a golden record for some big data use cases to bring all of the data together, process, map, dedupe, link, version, prioritize, and score, while maintaining the data provenance. We needed to get to the universal record. We wanted to be able to slice and dice the data, and most importantly, monetize it. So as we started to, I mentioned previously that we were built by acquisition. So I think it's key to sort of understand that when you're built by acquisition and you look through sort of all of the systems that you have in place, and we've heard this throughout the conference, you wind up with multiple systems sort of doing many of the same jobs. And it's difficult. It's difficult to manage. So another motivator for us was to look at this as an enterprise solution in trying to streamline and shrink the amount of systems that we were managing. So gradually, as I look through the vision, you can see the boxes start to get less and less, right? This is actually a future state of our architecture where we're using more shared systems across our verticals and obviously less systems to have to deal with. The ultimate conceptual model, though, is to really have it look like this. Now, we've got some work to do, right? I live in that data map that looks like the bingo card that I showed you before. But most companies are still struggling with whatever they call big data, right? It's multiple data sources, distributed data access, no business rules around the access, unstandardized data, evolving customer needs. We wanted the integration of behavioral and social data for a more complete view of our customer. And in addition to this was to keep the data fresh. The conceptual model here was the driving force to simplify, consolidate, and streamline our environment. So what do? We built an MDM dashboard application that allowed us to do some database management functions, give us a sort of a clean interface for overall database counts, tell us what kind of audience engagement we were looking at, give us a little bit of trend history for how that data is moving. We also took the UI to a level where we wanted to be able to narrow the sets of data. So, by using this clean interface, we can scan and refine a selection of users associated with classes, narrowing the field until we get to a specific or as near a specific class as we need. That's all great, right? This is exactly the solution that we wanted to have, but there was a lot of work we had to do before we got here. So we'll talk about the content and the data mashup. For us, it was about bringing our big data together, putting a fence around it, making sure that we had our key, our users and our admins in place, getting the data access rules and business rules straightened out and the data governance, adding context and connect to the content through the content itself and taxonomy, and then to make it available to our digital teams, our marketing and sales teams, and audience development. So what do you do first? Well, for us, we had to identify the buckets, right? If I looked across some of the applications that we use, you can see these are familiar, at least if you're in the media business, you're familiar with some of these. ExactTarget, Vertical Response, Cvent, 24/7 Media. We had to look at these and then identify where the cross connects were for these data sets, and then how best to retrieve the data. How do we want to store it, where we were collecting it, and what we needed to collect. By thinking about the data into some bigger buckets, we started to make sense out of these disconnected sets of data. So that was the first part. The second part is we needed to define the framework. So with our friends at MarkLogic, and MarkLogic Professional Services, and some third-party help, we developed a framework and feature set to set off to make it operational so that it would be useful for our marketing teams and beyond. Once we had that done and the workflow in place, the rest is easy, right? Not really. Once we had the framework and the features agreed, we spent a lot of time deciding on what we wanted to do with it. And then we spent sort of a little more time deciding what else we wanted to do with it. And then we spent some more time rethinking about what exactly we wanted to do with it. Our appetite for data kept growing, along with our acquisitions, and the new challenge of operationalizing the data flow into production is no easy task. We're now utilizing AWS to pass data through Converge, produce the golden record to have available in channels that are described here on the left of the slide. Our original requirement was really around 30 data sets, moving from a monthly load to a daily load. We still have some challenges to overcome with that, but we've been able to prove in theory and then execute on it. I mentioned acquisitions. So in order for us to architect the solution, we actually had to think beyond the original 30 data sets that we had, which, as you know, can create some challenges when you don't really have all of the requirements in front of you. So, we added verticals and new products and business units, and each time they all had a similar need or use for the data, but God forbid they have exactly the same need for the data. They don't. So as we added these business units and, again, some other data sets that we had to, it seemed like our requirement kept expanding and expanding. The ALM data ecosystem looks a little bit like this, right? We take all these data sources, put it into MarkLogic. I have an instance of MarkLogic that we're calling the MDM, but I also have an instance called Project One. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about Project One, which is really, if you want to think about it, the open data for what David and Gary and others have talked about. It's data that exists sort of outside your environment, but in the public sphere. So being able to pull that data in and then create individual sort of data sets around lawyers and law firms and companies and courts, and taking that data and having that available, so now you can start to create relationships between who our customers are, what firms they work with, and then what is that ring of data that connects them on the outside. Through the use of tools like Tealium and badging and other tools like Burst and Tableau, we're able to put data and analysis together for our internal use. Adding context and content. By using the MDM and the content instances and then adding content enrichment, we begin to see the relationships come together and make connections between prospects and customers, products and content, connections that we could never do or see before. Having an answer for the MDM really wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, and it wasn't good enough for us. As I mentioned previously about Project One, we started to ask more questions. Let me go back. We started to ask more questions. Can we expand our vision to go beyond the sharing of internally acquired data? Can we create new analytics and new analyses about our customers and the firms that they work for? Can we expand upwards of firm and go and look at vertical? Can we be consulting partners to our customers for geographical trends, partner movement, collect statistics on readership, either individually or by practice area or by firm or all of the above? So as you can see, we started to look at not just the work that we were doing in MDM, but also the work that we were the data that we were acquiring for Project One. So how do we get this done? We put a program in place, but in having that program in place, we understood that there were some sub-programs or tracks that we had to develop from that original sort of big data piece, right, where we were defining sort of who the prospects were, what the demographics or the transactions were going to be. We need to put those tracks in place and then set up projects to deliver against those tracks. So if you look, right, we have the programs in place, put the projects together, and you'll look towards the infrastructure on the bottom. I use things in this presentation, and they're all terms that we've been using sort of throughout the whole week here, right? Data marts, data sources, and governance. We have projects in place together with a service bus project that I mentioned earlier. So this way we can make this data available across our organization. So now we want to talk about how we leverage the data that we're actually putting together, right? So I want you to meet Jane Doe. Jane, we know, works in the legal sector. She has a job as an attorney. She works for a firm. We're going to make believe that firm is ALM. Because I know that firm, I have a firm ID for ALM. I also have a product called Rival Edge, where I can take that firm ID and get other information about who Jane Doe is and who she works for. I can know whether or not that firm is on some of our lists, whether it's the AmLaw 100 or 200, or whether she's been a recognition event winner or not. Because I have the firm ID, I have also built a table to the EIN number and the Dun & Bradstreet number. Take the EIN number, I know that from the Department of Labor what sort of benefit plans that company has at ALM. The Dun & Bradstreet number can give me other information about the size of the company, particular tax information. I also know that I have Jane Doe's email address because as a registered user of ALM, I know this information about her. She gave it to us, and that's how I know who she is. Because of that, I track her as she goes through our websites, whatever articles she's reading. I know what kind of devices she's using. I know what apps she has loaded on her devices. I know what sites she goes to. The article IDs, because I have multiple CMS systems built by acquisition, remember, I have articles that exist in one CMS or another. But through that, what I have done is now I've built sort of a path, or I know the articles that she has been interested in. As we move through more information about Jane Doe, I know that her attorney number is, I have given her a unique ID in our attorney database. I can associate that to other information that I collect through other ALM data sets, whether it's eTouches for our events or ExactTarget through our email marketing. I can also use this information as we gather offline behavior on individuals to see whether they have had decisions, had they been involved in lawsuits, where they've been involved in lawsuits, what sort of lawsuits they have been involved in. So now, the picture that I have of Jane Doe, not only does it get clearer and clearer, but the data that we've put around Jane Doe now tells a story about who Jane Doe is, what firm she works for, and what other either products or services we may be able to offer her. That's the leverage of the data. It's allowed us to do a number of different things and gives us information about who our users are and sort of what things they do, what their reading habits are, what transactions they've done on our purchase websites or subscriptions they have, what sort of registration, what sort of particular information about her that we get because she is a member of our digital environment. I know the size of the firm that she's at. I know engagement levels, how often she comes, and what her reading habits are. If you think about it, building insights to our ever-changing customer base, trying to understand what, when, the how of their jobs, to bring better products and expand services to them, all with the idea of generating revenue. In our business, it's not enough anymore to just sell an ad, or a single copy, or a subscription, or an event or a sponsorship. Our customers are looking for products and comprehensive marketing solutions. They're smart, and they're getting smarter. I think we're making them that way. We have to demonstrate to them why coming to ALM is the best choice that they can make for their business. And what better way to do that than to show them the data that we have about who they are and what they can do. We collect these data, we collect those sets in different, obviously this is just demonstrating about how we get the data that we collect and from what systems we get that. The second way to leverage is actually through audience targeting, right? This slide and a slide that is coming up are closely related. Being able to target specific audiences has significantly reduced our emailing to customers. No more email mega blasts. In a world where your mailbox is filled up with inbox messages, we have been able to significantly to sort to a significantly smaller office and smaller audience. When I say smaller, I mean 1/7 the size of what we would normally send to. And with that smaller population, we've been able to double our open rates, and we've increased our click-through rates by 6 or 7 times. That's a very powerful story when you're talking about knowing who your customer is and targeting who it is you want to email. Tealium lets us track and then use information that we collect through the movement of websites to fill in more general profiles that we have and make judgments on other recommendations for content and experience. More predictions lead to more targeting. We can use that information to follow around the ALM network between ads or content. Another way is leveraging through article taxonomy. We have categories and tagging. We set the foundation for tracking purposes like trends, likes, on the way to personalization and prediction, driving statistics about our content, our readers, and our advertisers. ExactTarget, this is the slide I mentioned before. We use ExactTarget to create lists that would consume hours and hours of valuable time of our marketing team. They're being built on the fly in an application called Audience Builder. We'll use that information to construct a specific journey about different layers of interactions with prospects and customers. It's a much more efficient use of our marketers' time. All this information is collected in MDM and then passed through to ExactTarget. The fifth way to leverage really is by using a new application, visualization. It's about adding reports and visuals for our sales and marketing team, integrating these reports into views and into a new rolled out single CRM in Salesforce. We just completed that Salesforce rollout last week and moving from Oracle CRM on demand. So when I take a step back and I think about all of the work that we have been doing, the acquisitions that we've done, the enterprise mapping that we've done, the MDM solution that we're building, the content portals that we've put in place, and then laying on top of that, moving to a single general ledger system, and then adding Salesforce into the mix. We've been a very busy group over the past year. But I'm happy to say that putting the real customer connected data into the hands of our real revenue generators, the salespeople, that's a reality. It's, what do I say all the time, Dave? It's living the dream, right? That's my dream, is to get the people who are able to make these business decisions the data that they need to make those decisions quickly. So, what does the future hold? Although this is really the end of the deck, it's not really the end of it for us. It's kind of just the beginning. Modeling and lead scoring, content optimization and recommendations. It's an ever-changing world for us. As I said, our customers are getting smarter and smarter, and I'd like to think that we're helping them that way. It's a double-edged sword. They're going to want more, and we're going to have to provide them more, and we're going to have to do it better and faster than we did before. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that means for ALM, but I think that we have with our people, our technology, and certainly our thinking. We're doing everything we can to sort of meet that challenge and then execute on it. Okay. So I've reached the end of my deck here. Are there any lawyers in the audience? Oh, there's one. Okay. It's time for a lawyer joke. See, I work for ALM, right? And I have to tell you a lawyer joke. So, and I actually promised Jerry I was going to tell a joke. So, okay. So it's St. Patrick's Day. And as luck would have it, Kevin comes across a leprechaun. Knowing that the rules are, if you catch a leprechaun, he must grant you your wish. So Kevin pounces on the leprechaun, catching him, and asks for his wish to be granted. So what might your wish be? The leprechaun says. Kevin pulls out a map of the world. He points to North America. Says, that's what I want. The leprechaun looks, he shakes his head. That's a rather tall order. And to be honest, I'm not really all that experienced yet in granting wishes. Is there anything else I can do for you instead? So Kevin ponders for a while and he thinks, I guess I'll settle for the name of an honest lawyer. The leprechaun really rolls his eyes and says, let me take another look at the map. I want to thank MarkLogic, and I want to thanks for your attention. I hope this was informative and at least a little bit of fun. And here's your big moment, right? What did I ask? I would like to have thunderous applause to make the other presentations very jealous. So here's your big moment. Thunderous applause. Thanks a lot. Are there any questions? If you can't have fun, it's just not worth doing. So,
Gene, great talk. Can you maybe talk about the business case, how you sold this to your management initially? I mean, I know that it's morphed into a lot, right? But initially, what was the business case around it?
So we had an audience database that we created on another solution, right? And we'd had it for a number of years. We'd sort of gotten to the end of life for what that was. We were partnered with a vendor. We wanted to do some really great things with the audience database. And as we started to build what the requirement sets were for that, we went out and looked in the market and came up with, the business case really was we were growing at a faster rate than our partner was able to do for us on the original audience database. And we knew that we had to go to a much larger solution. So we went out and looked at all the big iron. I mean, I looked at the Oracles and all of them lined up. And as we started to get through the discovery for all of that, what it came down to was, and these are, when I say big iron, I'm talking like 7-figure investments, right? $1 million, over $1 million. When it got back to what the requirement sets were, what we got was about an 80% solution. So now I'm thinking I've got a $1-point-something million solution we have to put in place, and I still have to customize it. Why would I want to do that? We had a lot of in-house expertise with MarkLogic. I've gone to, I'm surrounded by some very brilliant people. And to ask them and say, well, what do you think? What could we do? Well, let's try MarkLogic. Let's see what we can do. So working with the sales team, the professional services team, you saw how we laid out what the functions and the feature sets were. And then we just started to roll from there. And I will tell you that although it has taken longer, a little bit longer than I really thought for where we would be right now, I spent not nearly the 7 figures that we were looking at for these big iron solutions. So, some of that is our experience in MarkLogic, right? We had a great partnership in working that through. But it's also about knowing that you're going to have to put some time and effort into it. Why not use something that we have in place, right? Why not reuse the technology? So.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, this really gives me a very good detail in every high level, of course, how you really got to, just where you got to today. Can you talk about what could be your 5 years plan, how this could be evolving down the road for you?
Sure. So for me, living the dream for me is really now about taking some of these data sets, right? Part of what our CEO has asked us to be is the Gartner Group for highly regulated businesses, the verticals that we service. So if you think about that, think about the statistics that we can generate out of the data that we're collecting, what that says about firms and firms in their verticals and verticals across verticals. I think that there's a story there for how you can build content based on some of the statistical information that we're garnering out of this. And if you can do that and feed your content engine again, now you're taking information that you're going to be using internally anyway, anonymizing it obviously, and then putting that back out into the marketplace as expertise or consulting work. I think that's where we can go. I don't know that it's the only place that we can go, but for me, it's certainly part of the vision about what it was that we were building. And I would not be able to think that way except for the fact that I've put my customer data together with now my content data and my product data. And it tells a completely, you start to see stories there for what we can do by way of building products and services and analysis for our customers. I think that's really, if I have a 5-year vision, that's really where we need to be. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Any other jokes?
No, it's not a joke.
Oh, okay.
In one of your slides, you had from your MDM system going out to Drupal and Falcon and other.
Yes.
How did you decide to bring, that is, how do you know you have to go to which of those? How do you have that information? Is it the loose coupling or tight coupling decision with any master data management system? What's your decision?
Right, so for us, it's really about bringing that data together. So I know all of my content already exists in MarkLogic, right? So I've got the IDs, I have all of that information there already. So now what I can do is I can bring that information together, and we've done some work on decision engines. So pulling that information in and then being able to go and search our other content for product offerings. I built modules for that.
You actually built it to pull that information in.
That's right. But I can use that, again, that's one use for that, right? I mean, there are so many, other use cases that we can do for, just what sort of information you may want to read, right? What products we may want to offer you. So I hope that helps.
I have a question on one of your slides. You had a yellow box out with the MDM that was gold copy on
The golden record.
golden record.
Yep.
Is that something that your analysts in your organization have created through their own, intellectual thought process and work and curation? And does that truly sit outside of the MDM, or is it really in MarkLogic?
No, it's really in MarkLogic. That's just a representation of it. The idea is that we're able to pull all of those data pieces together to create sort of who Jane Doe is, right? I mean, if you go back to the other slide, it's about...
Is that really a new data element, or is that just tagging that references back to the true...
It is not a new data element. It's more referential. That's right.
Yeah, so I just have another question. So the question I have is that, you really have faced, probably a lot of different challenges, but from a financial standpoint, to make the decision on which piece that you want to build first, how did you find out and how did you tackle that?
So, we put those tracks in place based on, using sort of the bigger buckets for the big data, right? I mean, we put that together and said, well, okay, it's not big data like by, some Microsoft standards or however all of that, the petabytes of data that we talk about. But it's big data for us. And the approach that we were taking on this was to say, how do we want to know more about our customer? So then we split that apart into like individual programs, knowing that there were going to be projects against those programs that are going to have to, it's not like I can tackle it all at once. So for us, we have to sort of do some evaluation and talk to our business partners and say, look, I can do all of these things, right? These are the things that we really want to do. But what are the things you have to do first, right? What are the things that what's the best what's going to get the best bang for your buck out of this data? And then what that does for us is it builds the case for success, right? If we can deliver on that, then the argument gets a little harder the next time for what we want to invest in. But it also helps you lay out what your product plan is and how you want to achieve those things. You know, sometimes I think that that we're a little bit ahead of the game, but then you think about sort of the mountain of work that you have to do in order to get there, and I feel like we're always behind. But I think that we have the structure in place. I think we have the framework in place to accomplish those things. And that, in and of itself, it gives us it charts the direction for us. And we can go back and reprioritize those things. And I expect that we certainly will. You know, the part about using this, and I mentioned it, is about trying to architect for something that you don't really have all of the requirements for. I heard it half a dozen times this week. And it doesn't scare me as much anymore, because I know that we can sort of make it happen. And it's not, I don't have to go back to the drawing board all the time. So, any other questions? Well, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it, folks. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. That's it. Whoop it up.